will empower you and your family. I'm on old Coco today. We're going to hope she behave politely. So me and Coco going to share a word today. One of the things about riding a horse is sometimes the horse knows what to do, and sometimes the horse doesn't know what to do. But the key component of riding a horse is the rider should know what to do. As a great friend of mine likes to say, a bad rider mess up a good horse. And I think at this time in our lives, at this time in our country, at this time of what's going on, we're all kind of riding the horse and allowing the horse to tell us where to go. If the horse decides to stop, then we stop. The horse decides to go, then we go. This horse is going to stand here until I get finished because I am riding this horse right now. And my truth and my focus right now is to be here and to teach you in this position and in this spot. Truth is a powerful thing. And right now we find ourselves dealing with absolute truth versus relative truth. There is a such thing as truth. There's a such thing as right. There's a such thing as wrong. And what we're having right now is the truth that we believe is so distorted right now, we don't even believe what we see with our own eyes. There's some things when you just look at them with your eyes, they just kind of make sense to you. And I don't want to make this message all about what happened on that dreadful day with George Floyd at the hands of that police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But we do understand that there are some injustices, there are some inequalities in our country that we as a people, we as believers, we as individuals of influence, we have the ability to effectuate change. There's a word I have for you in John chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. Let's look at what it says in verse 1 and 2. We're dealing with 7 signs of Jesus in the book of John. This is the 6th sign, and we're dealing with the blind man that's born blind. Listen at what it says in 9, 1 and 2. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Really, what they're saying is, Jesus, whose fault is it? Who made the decision to be blind? We see the optical proof that this man cannot see, but who made that choice? Who made the decision for him to be blind? The disciples say, we don't believe he made the decision, Lord, but who sinned that this man was born blind? Was it his parents? Whose fault was it? Who made the choice? And in our country right now, we all have a personal responsibility to look with our eyes and choose to see truth, to look with our hearts of faith and see truth. Now, the fact of the matter is, as it pertains to this specific story, this man didn't choose to be blind. His parents, as Jesus clearly says that in verse 3, he did not choose to be blind. But I believe that in this day and time, there are many of us that are choosing to be blind about certain things in life, choosing not to see the facts, not seeing the truth. And on this day, I just want to deal with a few things, and then we'll move forward. But I'm dealing with the thought of choosing to be blind and choosing to see. Now, there's 2 sides of being blind. There's the one who's blind that just doesn't know any better. And then there's the person who's blind that refuses to see the truth. You know, I have a lot of technicians at the shop, and they fall in 2 categories. They fall into one individual who has a poor work ethic, just doesn't want to do things the right way, been doing it wrong his whole life. And now you get him or her in an environment and say, hey, we have one standard here. That standard is doing it right. And you'll see it with blocking a car. So you'll share with them what sandpaper to use. You'll share with them to take the car down to the metal. And what they'll do if you're not paying attention, they'll scuff it a little bit. They'll barely get the clear off. They'll use the original paint. They'll keep the original prime and all that stuff on there. And now here you are. They're building up a car. They're building up a car that does not have a proper foundation. Why? It's because they don't know any better. Sometimes they don't know any better. And it's my job to watch them and show them and illustrate it. Had a painter, a new painter here, a really great painter, really terrific painter. And the painter was blind about how many coats of clear to put on the vehicle. Painter didn't mind, but painter just didn't know. He didn't know how many how many you needed. Didn't know how many coats you needed. So I looked at the car. The car was absolutely beautiful. But when we looked, we saw something because we're not blind. And so I looked with the GM and we looked at the car. We say something about that just, the depth is not there. The clear is laid beautifully. The paint is laid properly, the right way. But there's something going on, something about this project. There's something going on, something about this is not right. So I called the painter in the office. I said, come on in, tell me how many coats of clear you put on there. Tell me what you did. Tell me about your process, because I don't see what I'm supposed to see right now. So he tells me, he said, well, I put 2 coats on there. I said, no, we don't paint like that on classic cars. You're going to put a minimum of 3, but really we're going to put anywhere from 3 to 5 coats of clear on the car. Now, the process of correcting what we did not see, I'm going somewhere with this illustration. The process of correcting what was wrong was a whole lot more work. Because now you got to sand this product down, the clear that's on here, before you come back with 3 more coats of clear or 2 more coats of clear. You just can't do it. But if we had done it at that one time, it would have been easier. One thing I know about truth is not easy. And operating in truth is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to operate in truth. And this horse here wants to move a little bit, so we're going to help this horse operate in truth right now. And but so what the painter did, the painter had to come back. Back up, So the painter had to back up. We had to do it over, so we reached a point of truth as it pertains to that particular project. There's some things going on in America that I just want to share. There is clearly, in my personal opinion, there's clearly a problem with There's clearly a problem with certain police officers and black citizens. There's clearly a problem there. There's clearly a problem with when you're black sometimes and a crime is said to be committed, and not that you're arrested and you go through the due process. The problem is you're denied due process. And oftentimes the policeman in the field chooses to be the judge, the jury, the grand jury, your peers, and pronounces upon you a death penalty. That's a tough fact. That's a tough reality going on in our lives. But I want us to see that. And this is my second or third week dealing with this subject. But I think the Almighty that there's a diverse audience listening right now. There's a diverse audience of people listening right now. There's an audience of Asian and of black and of Hispanic and of white and of older and of younger. Individuals from the South, individuals from the North, individuals from America, individuals from Canada, individuals from other countries that are listening right now. And I just want to appeal to that divine truth that's inside of you that I know is absolutely there. And I don't want you to deny what you saw. But the second thing I want you to know is that this is not a first-time occurrence. This is not the first time that something like this has happened to a person of color, to an individual who oftentimes could be wrong. But the problem is not whether the person who was harmed by the police was right or wrong. The problem is the justice that is applied even to the wrong is just too harsh. Even if I'm wrong about a thing, and I'm not specifically talking about George Floyd, but even if someone is wrong, the penalty is not death. And that is the problem. Even if I'm protesting and I'm 10 feet or 3 feet too close to where you want me to be, is the penalty for being 2 feet close, is that to hit me upside of my head with a billy club? If I'm speaking to a police officer and I'm too close to where I need to be, like such as the 75-year-old man, is the equitable justice at that moment to push me down so that I lose my balance, fall on the ground, hit my head, and bleed out of my ears? It is not the equitable punishment. It is not the equitable justice. But beyond that, even if society says that will be the end conclusion, you still have a right to go through due process. And so the due process of black men and now black women are being denied, and that's an absolute concern. Now, the question is, who sinned? Did the president sin? Did the police officer sin? Did the police union sin? We're trying to find fault, see? Did President Trump do it? Did the police officer do it? Did Barack Obama cause all this? Did George Bush cause all of this? Maybe it was the slave master, and maybe it was this one, and it's the white man, it's the black man, it's the Hispanic man, it's the looting that caused all of this. Listen, let's not deal with who fault it is, because I blame it on evil. Evil operating in this and permeating this American society. So now we found fault. E-V-I-L is called evil. But now we must, to solve this, we must strategically look at where the problem rests. I saw a great quote, a great illustration the other day. The illustration said, if my house is on fire and the police and the fire truck comes in here and puts water on all the houses that are not burning and then puts water on my house, that's not fair. Because my house is the only house on fire. Same thing here when you're talking about this police brutality. More times than not, the over extreme majority is a non-black police officer, and it's a black citizen. And the police officer goes too far as it pertains to the black citizen. And oftentimes, when it's a white citizen or an Asian citizen or a Hispanic citizen, and they are coinciding or siding with and advocating for the black person, then you too get treated like a black person. It means you have no rights, and we're gonna deny you all due process, and we're gonna meet justice here in the street. That's what I see, and I'm not trying to blame anybody. And I want you to understand this. This illustration with the blind man, Jesus wanted the blind man to see. The blind man wanted to see. The blind man didn't care if it was his mama's fault, his daddy's fault, his uncle's fault, the weather fault. The man wanted to see. And so the subject is not who's wrong. Was it this person's grandfather, that person's grandfather? Man, folk just want to see, that's all. People want their eyes opened up. They want to be able to live their dreams. They want to be able to have a happy life and things of that nature. Now, in this lesson, Jesus went to the blind man. He healed the blind man. He changed the blind man's life, but it was contingent upon actions. Look at what I say here. Look at what I say here. Whoa. Neither this man, you ever try to ride a horse and read about? Neither this man sinned nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed. As long as it is day, we must. Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. So in this lesson, Jesus says it's not whose fault it is. He says this will glorify God. So even in this situation, it's not about It's not about whose fault it is. Whoa. Whoa. It's not about whose fault it is. It's about that this is an opportunity to glorify God. This is an opportunity to give him glory. This is an opportunity to shout to his name. That's what this is all about at this time. So it's the same thing here with us in America. Whoa. Same thing with us in here in America at this time. It's not about whose fault it is. It's about what can we do to correct this situation. Whoa. What can we do to correct this situation? It's about having tolerance for one another. You know, this horse I'm on, this is one with training. He don't have a whole lot of understanding, a whole lot of act right, so we're going to give him some. And so, same thing with this horse. There are individuals that, come on back. There are individuals that may not know better, but we can help them. We can help them at this time. We can help them see the light. Now, as I look at this lesson, there's a couple of things that I see needs to happen as it pertains to this brutality and this concern that I see in America right now. It is high time for us to come together. It is high time for us to sit down at equal tables and chat and talk about it all. It is high time for that. It's high time for that. It's high time for us to come together, chat, figure it all out, sit down at the same table. Now, this old horse is acting up. But ultimately, this horse don't know no better. This horse don't know a whole lot. This horse know how to eat grass and walk around in the old pasture. That's about all this horse knows. Now, I can give up on this horse and all that kind of stuff. Or we can work with this horse and educate this horse and teach this horse. And that's what we have to do right now back up. That's what we have to do right now as a people. We have to educate one another. We have to teach one another right now about this hurt and this pain. In my office this week, I had a 21-year-old white woman, staff person. I had a middle-aged, I'll say it that way, Hispanic woman, staff person. I had a 60, I think my rep at O'Reilly's is 60-something. So he's about 60-something-year-old white man. I had another paint rep that was, he's probably about 50-something that was there. And I was a black man. And we stood in the lobby of City Classic Cars, and I think it was the O'Reilly's rep that brought it up, started talking about looting and the injustice. And we sat there right there in that office, and we had a discussion. The 20-year-old had a viewpoint. The middle-aged Hispanic woman had a viewpoint. The 50-something-year-old Hispanic man had a viewpoint. We all had a viewpoint, and we sat there and talked. At one time, not one time did we say whose fault it was. We talked about how do we solve this and how do we get past this conclusion. I talked about three things last week. I'll hit them again this week. One thing I'll talk about is we have to be willing to have discussions with individuals that do not vote in our voting block. We have to be willing to have discussions with individuals that don't like what we like for fun. We like messing with horses and spending money on horses and all of that kind of stuff. Somebody else likes cars. Somebody else likes going to the movies. Somebody else goes to all the boxing matches, the MMA matches. And we're not saying that that's wrong. We're just different people. We have different things in common. But we're in a season now, if we want to change this, that we must be willing to be in uncomfortable settings and to have uncomfortable conversations. And not conversations about police brutality, not conversations about being black in America, not simply those conversations, but what can we do as a union, what can we do as a people to be better? We can have that conversation. The next thing I see as it pertains to this, it's time for the church to put ministry as the front door. So the church has two doors. It has a front door and it has a back door. you know. And sometimes, you know, I enter at my house through the back door more than I do the front door, you know. So, and you may enter your back door at your house, or you may enter your front door and never enter your back door. But normally a home has two main points of entrance. And normally those are the main two. You may have 3 entrances or 4 entrances. I have multiple entrances. But there's 2 primary ones I use. And the church has had 2 primary doors. One has been called worship, and one has been called ministry. For one season in our lives in this country, ministry was the front door. It was the church was about helping people. The church was about, especially the black churches I grew up in, the churches were about empowerment. I mean, I think about all the ministry, not the worship. You know, as a child growing up, the worst part of church was worship. You know, that part was boring, you know, for us as children. But there was so much ministry. We went on summer trips with each other. We not only went on summer trips, we played basketball on the church team. I have friends, one of my great friends gone on to be with the Lord many years ago, London. And London went to West Side, I went to Richmond. And West Side and Richmond, you know, we kind of get along, but not really. And we want to whoop them in football, and we know we're going to beat them in basketball. That's just how that goes. But we went to church together, and we had such a relationship together. I could have great relationships with individuals at West Side. They could have great relationships with individuals at Richmond. Why? Because the common denominator was us, and we met each other at church and CP, and the list can go on and on and on and on. But we all knew each other. We all had great times with each other. We played basketball with each other. Ministry of the church. Just the ministry. I mean, after school program, we did that at church. We did that at church. Going to the prisons, we did that through the church. You didn't have to have no nonprofit group raise up. Church did everything. You couldn't pay your light bill. I ain't saying the church paid it, but you could sure go talk to them. That's what the church did. You had death in your family, church showed up with food. Church did all of that. You know, even this day and time, we look at funerals. Funerals are so expensive. You got to pay the funeral home all the money. And I'm not knocking the funeral home. They have businesses, they have expenses. But man, when the church was doing what the church was supposed to do, somebody would die in your family, the church take over from there. You're not going to have to cook. You're not going to have to feed yourself. You're not going to have to clean your house. You're not going to have to answer the telephone if you don't want to answer the telephone. And you don't even have to plan the funeral. Church going to plan the funeral for you. They're going to take care of everything for you. And if you don't have enough money, the pastor and the church going to work that out as well. But then we got to the point, hey, I remember growing up, the church was not on my level, not worship. Worship was geared to, I believe, 50, 60-year-old people. And, man, church was all about them and what they could get out of it, and the preacher would preach to them. At least that's how you felt as a young person, as a teenager, and as a young adult. And so worship changed. There was a niche in the market. There was a niche in the ecclesiastical order. And so we see all these mega churches, all these community churches that sprung up through the years, that all these churches that have worship like none other. The problem is we don't have ministry like none other. That's the real problem. And I believe what God is doing, he's changing it. The main door of entrance is ministry. The second door of entrance is going to be worship. I think that's very, very, very important. And the last one is, and this is, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you to vote for a Republican, a Democrat. I'm not telling you to vote for an independent. I'm not telling you to vote for a woman. I'm not telling you to vote for a man. But let me tell you how it works in this country. It's called voting. You know, people that look like me, they fought real hard. What did they fight hard for? For the right to vote. That's how you make change in this country. Now, is there anything wrong with protesting and walking? No, that's very, very important. It's very important provided the end goal is legislative change. If the end goal is just an emotional response to make somebody else mad, if the legislative laws do not change, it really doesn't matter. And if you don't put legislators and judges and presidents and these individuals in place that believe in your version of the truth, your version of what you see to be right and wrong in life. That's why I say we're blind by choice. I'm not going to vote Democrat just because I'm Democrat. I'm not going to do that now. And just because I'm black, I should say. And I'm not going to not vote Republican because it made me look bad as a black person. I don't know about that. Now, I have my view. I have my opinion. I have my point. But I have my truth. And I'll be honest, as a businessman, as someone that believes in capitalism, and someone that believes in free enterprise, and someone that say, won't you cut down on these taxes, it doesn't take long for a Republican to speak about cutting taxes and all that. I go, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. I mean, it doesn't take long, right? Because I'm looking from my perspective. But I also look at life from another perspective. You know, Jesus said you're going to always have the poor with you. He said you're going to always have the less fortunate with you. That means there's a responsibility to someone else besides yourself. That's going to always be the truth. That's going to always be the facts. You have to decide for yourself what's important for you, what's important for your perspective, and you have to vote your personal conscience. That's what this is all about at this time. Legislative influence, legislative power. Now, as I finish, when you take an intake off a car, and a lot of times we take off, at least we used to a lot of times. We don't do too much repair and maintenance anymore. But a lot of times we used to do a basic performance upgrade package. You put an Edelbrock intake valve that allows a direct fit carburetor, 650 CFM or something like that. So it allows for a direct connection. So we would sell that package where you would clean both. And a lot of technicians that were unknowingly, what they would do, they thought they was helping. They would take the carburetor off. They would take the top off. And they would see that gunk in there. You know, the sludge that builds up in the top of that engine. And so what they would do, they know any better. Man, they'd clean that out. They clean that out. They clean that out. Boy, they just getting all that gunk out because they don't like the way it looked. They don't like it. They didn't want to exist with it. So in their common sense, they say, you know, no, I'm going to take all of this out. And then you catch them. You say, brother, that's the wrong thing to do. Because you can't get it all out. Now, unless you're going to bust this engine all the way down and we're going to hot steam everything and put it all back together, you cannot get that out. You cannot get all that stuff out by wiping. And if you try to get it out by wiping, get out the part that you don't like, the part that you can see, there's going to be some parts you cannot see that are still in there. And when this engine gets to turning again, now that stuff which was really adhered and tight and was out of the way, now that stuff is going to start moving around. It's going to create problems in the engine when you didn't even have to do that. Now that sounds twisted. Just like Jesus gave the man an illustration, he said, go wash in the pool. Go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he sent him on an assignment. In this hour, what assignment has God given you? What has God instructed for you to do at this hour? It may not make sense. It may not seem logical. The logical thing to do if you look with your human eyes is to do this. I heard something the other day that I thought was foolish. And I don't care if you don't like it, but they booed the mayor, and I think it was Minneapolis. And the person on stage was irresponsible with their platform, in my opinion. Stated, do you agree with defunding the police department? Well, if you defund the police department, who's going to pay the police department? And who's going to protect the citizens of the police department? So what we want to do, so can you defund the police department? No. That don't make sense. Because when something happens in your life, who you going to call? You're going to call the police. 11 o'clock at night, you see something out there moving around, who you going to call? You might call Smith and Weston, but at some point, you're going to call the police. So it's not about defunding the police department. It's going to end racism in America. That goes back to my illustration about that intake. And so if you're not going to clean out the entire valley right there, leave it alone. You cannot eradicate racism in America by simply changing the police department. Racism is not contained in the police department. It's in a lot of places. It's in the school system. It's in businesses. It's in neighborhood associations. It's in rodeo clubs for youth. It's in the NFL. It's in the NBA. It's in the White House. It's in the outhouse. It's in the legislature. It's in the state house. It's on the judicial bench. What you gonna do? You gonna eradicate everything? So what we have to do is get to the root of the issue. The root of the issue is not defunding the police department, and that's gonna make everything better in life. That's not what it is. That's not what's gonna do it. We have to get to the core of the matter, which is racism in our country. And I want you to have these uncomfortable discussions. And so I'm gonna do it one more week, and I'm gonna give you a heads up. So if you don't want to have this discussion, don't meet me next week. Meet me the week after that, and we'll be back to our normal messages. But I want to give you a platform. I want to give you an opportunity so that we can have these discussions. Because if you know me, you either like horses or you love cars. If you're watching today, you come from one of those places, or maybe you've listened to Bible studies before, or been in worship services with me, or your family and friends. But it's time to have uncomfortable conversations. It is time that we all come together and we chat and we talk a little bit. You know, this horse here is kind of like saying, you know, this horse here didn't do good because this horse is white. You know, if this horse was black, this horse would ride real better. See how that head doing? That's because the horse is white. See this pigmentation right here? That coloring, really is a great horse, but that color makes this horse do all of that. Man, a good horse comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. And a bad horse does too. If it was that easy, you could just look at the hairs on a horse, or even the conformation of a horse. Man, the horse racing business it would be easy to win over there. Hey, good comes in all form, bad comes in all form. Hey, I'm going to put this horse up. I'll talk to y'all next time. God bless you. Look at this word. Study this word this week. I want you to look at two parts of it. Who sinned? Whose fault was it? The man or his parents? I mean, whose fault was it? But really, I want you to look at the question, what can you do to change things? Not whose fault it is. There's too many debates about whose fault it is. Let's talk about what can we do to change things. So we need to talk about that. Then the other part says scent. Scent. I was riding down Louetta last night. I went by the shop, and I saw, it was a little early. It was getting dark. And I saw this group on the corner, and they were corner of Louetta and Champions. That's a high dollar district right there. And they were standing there at that red light. They were black. They were white. They were Hispanic. They were Asian. They were male. They were female. But you know what they had in common? They was all under 24, 25 years of age. They seemed to be between 16 and, I'm just estimating, 16 and 22, 23. And they were just talking about Black Lives Matter and police departments and just equality. But they were modeling that out in them lives. And so they were sent. I believe they were sent on that corner at that hour to allow the community to see what coming together is all about. As you go throughout your week this week, I want you to figure out what's the next step? What's the next opportunity God will have for you? God bless you. See you next time.